No, that ain't the good stuff though. Crazy stuff is what's really going on.
Well, with Diddy,
Heck yeah, man. That is something.
I haven't heard more of it yet.
That's
I've only heard
crazy
bits
stuff,
and pieces of it, but
that's crazy, man. Like the baby oil thing, like everybody, that's the whole
joke that you got that many
yeah,
baby.
you're right. But I mean, if you
It's
want to
only-
have that many bottles of baby oil, cool. But I don't know.
Questionable.
Yeah,
Why you need
because not only that, because and this is just, of course, third, fourth, fifth, eighth person information.
Yeah,
It might be incorrect.
that. You don't know until like
Right until it come out. Right,
it comes out.
They saying that it was tainted with like some kind of drug, like ecstasy or something, and then once you put it on your body, you get that euphoric feeling.
I heard something about
Something like that, you know?
People were always saying it either was in the baby oil or in the drink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it must have been like it was in the drink than the baby oil. But like, first of all, why were you even putting baby oil on? Like you don't just walk into a house and like, all right,
Where's the baby oil?
let me start rubbing some baby oil on. Like, see, typically that's some weird freaky stuff you're gonna be putting baby oil.
Yes.
I mean, but that's like, and I don't know. That's the whole thing about it. Like I've only heard bits and pieces of it. I haven't really sat down and listened to it or listened to someone who's written all the allegations.
Yeah.
I think the thing is like, from a moral standpoint, which typically like our podcast, the Christian podcast, we're gonna stand from a moral standpoint. A lot of it's bad.
Oh yeah.
But then you start looking at it from a legal standpoint, it's just as bad certain areas.
Oh, definitely.
Like if it was all consenting adults,
then what can you say?
Yeah, you can talk about it from a morality standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, oh, morally that's wrong. That's why God talks about sexual.
Yeah.
And it's
immorality.
Yeah, and a lot of times we'll stick around with fornication and homosexuality, but the stuff that it takes you down sometimes and all these other things. And I think when you look at it, what the other tones of what you're hearing is like people were having to do it against their will. Now you head down and then underage.
Well, yeah.
And then once you head into the underage, now you're in a whole different
full horse into something.
Yeah.
That's just wrong.
Because that's kind of where they were
That was
going.
wrong.
That's where they were going with the sex trafficking. That it's not sex trafficking unless you're forcing someone and then you're taking them across state lines. And that's kind of where they were headed with all of that. I think the hard part, and again, I don't know. I don't know all the allegations are. So don't crucify me.
Right. None of us really do. So
I think the hard part is there's physical coercion, and then there's kind of this new like empowerment coercion. I don't know what it's called, but basically it's more of he owns the industry. So by him owning that, he coerces, and that I think is a little harder to prove. Like that's always going to be a hard one to prove because you have to have, at least my opinion, you have to have physical words or something that says this person threatened their job or their livelihood in order for them to do that. And so that's where but again, I mean, there's a lot of victims, a lot of people that are hurt by this. So it's going to be interesting. Like more now, it's kind of, I don't know, the stuff I've seen. And a lot of times I watch a little bit of shorts and I'll try to catch some videos, but there's just so much going on. I hadn't paid attention to that portion of it. But the ones you do, there's a lot of focus on Justin Bieber and kind of what happened to him. And then like
Usher.
Then you listen to some of his songs and stuff. So, I mean, whatever it is, I mean, you got to pray for those people.
Yeah, man.
Justin Bieber.
Well, what they're saying, when he was like 15 or something like that, his parents left him with Diddy to go through Diddy's camp and to help him become, and what they're saying is he was basically raped during that time. He was underage and he was with these grown men.
I believe it too.
Yeah.
I believe it happened, man.
And so like you've seen, like in the last few years, he's kind of gone through this thing of going through Christianity, kind of dealing with it. Like, I mean, there was a whole thing with Hillsong, but then he was also with that other guy, Judah Smith.
Yeah.
So he's and he's made some like Christian music and some of the music like you hear now, like he made a song that everyone keeps playing. It was talking about some song called Lonely. And he's talking about the fame and how he lost himself in in that because he was just a kid going through all these things.
It's crazy.
Because, I mean, he's 15 years old. He blows up as a kid. And then now these things are coming out. Like, there's allegations that he may have, been molested or raped.
But he's never come out and said it, has he?
He hasn't directly said it, but there's things in his songs. And there's kind of, people are, like, there was always this kind of, at the time, they would do it, like, as a joke. There was a video, an interview, where I think he's about 18 or 19 at this point, and he runs into Diddy, and Diddy's like, where you at? You haven't come and hung out anymore, and blah, blah, blah.
Party with me no more.
And he was like, no, and you can see he's uncomfortable. And so now people are revisiting a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's hard to, it's hard to tell, but I mean, but the thing again, like his parents at 15 years old are leaving him with this.
I know.
And so, I mean, but it was the kind of the same thing with Michael Jackson. Like you go through those court cases, and I mean, there's a lot of wrong there. But then you also wonder, like, okay, why were the parents even bringing these kids? Exactly. Like, I get it's Michael Jackson, but still, like, to leave them like there overnight or whatever.
Yeah, but this whole thing with this guy though, man, it's just it's crazy. Because I actually watched the TMZ video about it. Yeah. The whole how he was. He got indicted. He was under investigation. All these allegations, all these people who were involved. I mean, it's a lot of people in Hollywood involved.
Well, the whole thing is like they're comparing it to a Weinstein. So he had cameras all over in his house.
Yeah, definitely.
So he has all these famous people there and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so it's like almost like he had blackmails and all these things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, and then you kind of get like. So I don't know if you ever heard Lecrae. Lecrae's talked about it because Lecrae used to gone to some of his parties, but Lecrae was like, he actually, before it really blew up, even when it was just starting to become like the rumors, when the Cassidy part and stuff, he addressed it on one of his. I recommend you go listen to it. Lecrae started a podcast and he actually does some really good stuff and pretty cool to listen to. But he talked about like how like during that time, like because he was blowing up, he was hanging out in some of those things, and he went to the party and people were like, look, Lecrae, at midnight you need to be out. And it was that guy that came out on with
I seen that clip
with Martin Lawrence on Big Mama's House, the second one.
Yeah.
That kid. And he was like, hey, Lecrae, I know you're like you might be struggling, but the things that you don't want. And Lecrae didn't grow up in church. So Lecrae's like, dude, I've been around all of this stuff. I've seen it. This ain't no big deal. Like, yeah, I know you think I'm the church boy. And so then he said, like, he was in the studio and it's starting to get late and he walks out and the music had changed in the house. And he goes up one stairs and he sees these guys going at it, like full makeout. And then he's like, more stuff's going on. And he was like, all right, that's what they meant. And he got out.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I never went back again.
I think I seen that clip. Yeah.
Yeah. So he talked about that. But like, then you have like, and again, you don't know because like you have like TD Jakes who was at some of those parties. But again, you don't know if TD Jakes was there through the whole thing, participated, or if he was gone. And that's the mystery you have because you have, all these famous people. Ashton Kutcher always used to say he partied with Diddy, Kevin Hart, all these people.
Yeah.
So it's like no one knows who knew what or what went on or things like that.
It's gonna be interesting though.
And that's the thing. Like at first, it all was about it was homosexual stuff, and that they were trying to hide it because in that industry and the stuff Diddy and all them did. That's not the thing. Then what started coming out, it was more of, okay, now they were coercing people to do it. And then it became minors. And so now you have all this other stuff there. So it's like, you really don't know until all the court cases and everything comes out. But as it comes out more and more.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like a lot of times people were saying that, and who said it? I think 50 Cent said it or somebody. Like there was even Kanye was saying that. Like a lot of people were kind of saying he was a undercover agent for the FBI. Like he was gathering these so the FBI could use this stuff because there was always famous, powerful people at those things, and now they have videos of them that they don't want out. So now you have the FBI government conspiracy tied in, and so it's like,
so many daggone conspiracies though.
Yeah,
it's like.
But that's what they were saying about Weinstein too. Why Weinstein was able to get away with it and he was untouchable for a long time.
Yeah.
Was that he had he was, I can't remember the word they used, but he basically was a FBI CIA agent.
Yeah.
Like that's he gathered intel for them so that they could use these powerful
too.
people.
Heard that one too.
So I don't know.
Heard that one too.
But it does kind of lead to welcome to the No Name Podcast. This is not TMZ. It sounds like it,
I know, right?
To the No Name Podcast.
That's right.
Episode 102.
Right.
Hit the like and subscribe button, pass on to others. But it does lead into kind of the conversation we're talking about, both from a comment left about talking about generational curses and spiritual warfare. And I think when you start looking at things like that, there's a spiritual warfare that goes on in these things in regards to temptation. I think kind of what it takes you down. And that's kind of the thing about spiritual warfare. Like it's real. I truly believe that. The one piece I don't believe is the one thing that I believe is that I don't think we have a good understanding and concept between spiritual warfare and flesh and battling the flesh. Like there's let me put it this way. Spiritual warfare covers both, but I think that we don't always have a full understanding of battling the flesh and then battling the devil or the principalities that we don't see. And I think there's a distinction between the two, and I think sometimes we lump them together, and a lot of times they go over each other, and and that's kind of the whole point of it. But I think sometimes we get tied into it one way or two for far from there. And I think like what you see with the Diddy situations, what we see in the world, even in our personal lives, there's a battle with the flesh, and then there's the battle with the devil. Like the battle of the flesh, I think with the Diddy and even ourselves is our lust, our pride, things like that. Like you have to get to I mean, I would believe you had to be in a point where you're so prideful, you're so lustful, you're so this and that you're doing things to that extent where you think you're not going to get caught, that you're above the law.
Yep.
Right. And that's something that's in all of us. Like, I think that's something that's why Paul, throughout the Bible, talks about us dying to ourselves, the battle of the flesh, submitting our lust, submitting our sins. I believe when we talk spiritual warfare, the devil can't force you to do anything, but where it overlaps and what the difference is. So what I think it is the battle of the flesh is internal. The battle with the devil is external. So if you already have lust and stuff in your heart, and that's a fleshful thing, that's something in you, what the devil's going to do is, if he knows you're already battling it, because he can't read your mind or stuff, but he knows, hey, you're watching this stuff, or hey, you took too long of a glance at a what he'll do is, if you're in the wrong areas, he's going to keep putting that stuff in front of you, right? He's going to bring that temptation. And the way he brings that temptation is he brings it to the whole world, right? Sometimes we think our temptations are individually sought after us. But if you look at us, most of us struggle with lust. So what do we, and again, I'm not saying this so people turn off their TVs and everything, but when you haven't conquered your internal, the external, you're going to see it, whether it's on TV, movies, whatever it is, you're going to be on. And so the devil fights the spiritual warfare, sometimes specific, but sometimes in general, in that it's external stuff, right? The temptations in front of us and things like that. What I caution us to do is, like, we start putting that on the person, right? Oh, well, that woman shouldn't be dressing that way, or that man shouldn't be doing that, or this and that. And they probably shouldn't. But that's not the battle. You're not going to win that battle. Like, trying to get everyone to dress properly, you're not going to win that. You're not going to win that battle. Right. The battle you're going to win is you're able to, one, resist that temptation. And in resisting that temptation, identifying the internal issue and then dealing with the internal issue. Because if you're dealing with your lust on a daily basis, in other words, you're submitting it to God, you're working with him on it, you're not trying to deny that you're not lustful. You understand you are, and you're allowing God to help you deal with that and work through it. Then there's less of a chance that it manifests itself externally when temptation comes. But if you're not doing that, then guess what? It's going to manifest itself externally when temptation comes. And I think that's what some of the distinction between in spiritual warfare. And I think that's why sometimes it gets difficult because a lot of times we'll focus on the external and we want to fix the external, but we don't want to fix the internal.
Right.
That's just kind of my kind of concept of when I start thinking about spiritual warfare.
Paul said that what I want to do in the spirit, I don't do. What I don't want to do in the flesh, I do. You know, he wasn't blaming the devil there.
Yeah.
He was blaming his battle with the flesh.
You're right.
You know, that he was struggling with it, which we're all going to struggle with our flesh. And you know, and, technically everything's a spiritual battle in the Christian life. But you have to distinguish if you know, some of your battles doesn't come from the flesh.
Yep.
You know, because the flesh is always going to battle us too.
Yep.
Because since Adam and Eve sinned, that gave us a sinful nature.
Yep.
And that sinful nature is always going to resist the spiritual, you know. So, you know, I was telling a brother yesterday, I said, look, one thing the devil cannot do is reach your mind. Cannot reach your mind. So, but he knows what we struggle with.
We fall too?
Because we start in our prayers, we say it out loud, you know, oh Lord, I'm struggling with this. Oh Lord, help me with that. And then the devil can listen. He says, oh, okay, now I know where to attack.
Or not even not even with just that, but also with it's like us. If you're studying your enemy, you know all their weaknesses and everything. Yeah. If he's studying us, he sees, like I was talking about, he sees when we're like, you know, like and again, like there's the human nature, then there's the lust. Lust is always the easier one, right? But but there's other things like with pride and things like that where he knows, versus us. Even to your point, there's a part with saying it, but then there's also a part he's watching us when no one else is watching us too. Like he can't read our minds and stuff, but like if you're studying someone long enough and you're monitoring them 24/7 and you don't have to rest, you're going to start noticing some tendencies in a person.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's the way, I think the thing that makes it like, I felt like I always gave it one of the best kind of illustrations of it is if you ever read the book Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, that shows you a spiritual warfare. If you read it, it'll show you spiritual warfare, both between the internal and the external, because it's about a lower demon writing to a higher demon on how they're going to tempt this person. And it talks about how their views are of when he's walking around and he's hanging out and he's watching something. Oh, I noticed he glanced at this a little bit too longer. You know, let's try this. Or he goes, you know, most humans fall for this, so you should try to tempt them with this, this, and this. Or he's struggling at work. And then he was like, oh, he's going to church now. Okay, well, you need to try to do this, this, and this because he's going to church. Make him see all the flaws, make him see all the issues, and get him where he thinks he's better and leaves. And it's just an interesting concept because you start seeing like there's the internal, the fleshly battle, then there's the external. And I think it hurts us not to understand the two, because when we go too much to the external, which I think a lot of people tie spiritual warfare to.
People do. Right.
We tie it to the external. Oh, the devil made me do this. Oh, the devil was tempting me. And there's nothing wrong with like the songs like that. I like the songs like I went to the enemy's camp. But a lot of times going into the enemy's camp, we gave them a lot of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like we gave the devil that stuff. He didn't take it.
Right.
We went and said, here's my pride. Here's my lust. Go ahead and do with it. Right. And I like the song and I like it. But sometimes we get so caught up, I'm going to stomp on the devil's head, that we forget, like, okay, I can stomp on the devil's head all day, but if I haven't died to my flesh, like if I haven't let my flesh die, if I haven't died first and been born again, like one of the big lessons Jesus started off with Nicodemus was being born again.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, the flesh, sometimes when we look at the external, we rank sins. And all sin is bad.
Yeah, why?
Well, because from a human standpoint, from a human standpoint, I mean, I think from any standpoint,
wrong.
Some of them, yeah, but some are more grotesque than others, I guess.
Okay.
And so
fair.
I think we judge it from the outside that way, and it's hard not to.
Yeah.
right?
Of course.
It's hard not to.
I mean, because if you say like somebody got killed versus somebody lied, both of them is wrong.
Yeah.
But you would say, oh man, the person who got killed, that's just like,
yeah, murder versus
somebody lying, like, it's just a lie.
Yeah.
But it's still wrong.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you went with that example because mine was going way too extreme. I was trying to get an example, mine was going way too extreme. But I like you went with that one. Murder and lying was a lot better than what I was like, I was gonna go like but no. I did, but to your point, when God looks at it, it's God's not gonna measure it on because God sees the heart, right? That murder is the external of something that was inside, right? True murder. I'm not talking about, but true murder. Where the lie from us on the outside might have been nothing, but on the inside, we have no idea that person inside, that lie they're hoping leads to something way worse, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, there's white lies and we might be going extreme, but I'm just saying like, that's the difference why God sees sin as sin, but we kind of rank it in different areas. And I think that's one of the things like when we're dealing with, God gave us the pathway to the internal, that's submitting to Christ,
right?
That's dying. That's why Jesus died on the cross, right? That's the forgiveness of our sins. That's supposed to kill the internal part of us, and it's supposed to allow us to grow that relationship with God and be in this relationship with God, and be in that. The external, I believe, is what he goes into next, where he talks about, okay, if you're dying to your flesh, that's the first part. And that was one at the cross. But then if that was the all be all, then there's nothing else left. But when you look at it, you see Paul starts talking about, the armor of God, right? That's how you battle the external. The armor of God is not going to kill the flesh. If you have not dealt with the flesh, it's hard to put on the armor of God. But if you've submitted and died to the flesh, now you put on the armor of God. Now you're able to deal with the external. Right, you have this belt of righteousness, this helmet. You got prayer, faith, all those things, and I don't have them all memorized, but you have all those things, and those are the things that you wear when you're going to external. Because guess what, the spiritual warfare is not. I don't believe it doesn't just happen when you become a Christian. It's been ongoing in the world since the beginning of time.
For sure.
Since the moment Adam and Eve, even before they fell, that whole falling in the garden was part of the spiritual battle. The only thing is you become more aware of it. And as you're putting that on, guess what? The devil's trying to tempt all of us, in everything that's going on. And if you look at our world today.
Yeah. He tempted Jesus.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
It was 40 days, nights in the desert. He tempted him.
And there's general temptations that are aimed at the world. And there's going to be there's specific temptations, right? Like to your point, the devil tempted Jesus. He used specific ones. Now, those could have been used for anyone. But at that moment, that's what's specific for Jesus.
You hungry? Make that, turn into bread. Turn that stone into bread. You hungry.
Yeah. And really, one of the interesting part about that temptation is really he was trying to turn God's word and corrupt it. Because it was like, the word says, he'll send his angels to feed you. And he was like, no, that's not what that means.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, you came here to conquer the world. Well, here, let me give it to you.
Yeah.
Right. And he was misconstruing some of the things. But then I think there's the general temptations, right? Like we're walking around and there's stuff that's out there for all of us, right? You turn on the TV, you turn on these things.
Look at your phone, whatever. Yeah,
it's everywhere. It's like, and I don't know, maybe I'm using a bad example, but I'll just use it. I don't know what else to use. But like, I went to Comic-Con with my brother and nephew yesterday, right? For my brother's bachelor party, that's what we did. We went to Comic-Con. And for the most part, it's a very wholesome place. People are there walking around, dressed in costume, cosplay, and all this stuff. And you go walking through, and they got comic books, you're signing it. You got famous people out there, and you're going there. And then you turn one corner, and there's a very small section. You walk through, and honestly, if you're looking straight ahead, you're not paying attention.
You miss it?
I mean, you don't miss it, but if you actually, well, I guess not even if you look straight ahead, but you have eyes, you're walking through. There's a small little section where it's cosplay, and cosplay is people dressing up, but it's women dressed up as these skimpy characters, like talking stuff, nearly hanging out. Right now,
Okay.
I'm not gonna be like, well, the devil put that specifically for me. That was there. That was my temptation. The devil put it there for me. That was my thing. No, that was a general temptation for a lot of people.
Of course.
Right now, if I don't have my spiritual work, if I don't have my armor of God on, well, then I fall into my habits, and on that means also that's showing me I haven't dealt with something inside of me, right? Now, what am I gonna do? Close my eyes and run through? Shame on you, all of y'all gonna have. Shame on you all. No, like you go through, you say, okay, hey, we took a wrong turn.
Yeah.
You kind of like, well, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And then you kind of walk through, and it's funny, like you'll look at things like I literally, I saw one table and it was opposite from where they were at. And I'm there and the people are normally dressed, and I look and I read the sign, it says adult anime. And I'm thinking, what the hell's adult anime? It took me a second. I'm like, oh, I mean, only difference between anime and adult anime has to be is pornography.
Yeah, of course, right.
And it's like, really? Like, all right, I guess. Like, but again, these temptations, I'm not if I go too far wrong on spiritual warfare and don't understand it, I'm gonna be like, oh, the devil put that in front of me and blah blah blah. And again, that's where you have to have the balance of it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the balance and the understanding, and a lot of it has to do with our heart. And the devil can't force us to do anything, and it's important. That's why, even for ourselves, you have to stay close to God. You gotta understand your own weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the hardest things, I think, when you're dealing with the flesh and really submitting to God. It makes you understand your weaknesses. Oh, I'm weak in this area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm weak in that. And sometimes we'll touch it to the physical, but it's what leads me to that. Is it my loneliness? Is it my my low self-esteem, the hurt I have inside of me, the distrust I have,
right.
And that's really what God wants to deal with. A lot of times we think God just wants to deal with our outside issues. Oh, you're a sex addict. Oh, you're an alcoholic. Oh, you're a drug addict. You're this and that. No, God wants to deal with what led you to that drug addiction. Because that drug addiction was the external of something that was internal.
Mm-hmm.
Something that was already in you and then they manifested out, right? People don't inside of themselves just say, I'm going to be a drug addict. It's something inside of them led to that. I mean, you can answer that if you want.
You either wake up in the morning and just say, oh, yeah.
It just happened.
It is just, okay. You're still going through your God therapy.
No, I mean, the Bible says that, sin is the root of all evil. And sin will move the flesh.
Yeah.
It will move the flesh too.
Yeah.
That's why I always say, whoever you feed in the morning is who's gonna lead you.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you feed the spirit, doesn't mean that you're not gonna struggle throughout the day.
Oh no,
but it's easier because you know that you but if you don't, then the flesh is gonna come and sometimes and again, it's not always the devil.
Yeah.
It's just the flesh.
Yeah.
The desires of the flesh. In Galatians, if you study the book of chapter 5, where it talks of about the fruits of the flesh and the fruit of the spirit.
Yeah.
And it tells you, what's there, and it's everything you see around, it's not always the devil's.
But that's what I mean. Like speaking to the example and just kind of, we don't have to go too deep into it, but like even for you, like you were a drug addict, but it wasn't because you just like drugs. I mean, that's later on in life, but there was something inside of you that manifested out into drug addiction.
Yeah.
Like you didn't go start sniffing spray just to sniff it. You started because you were dealing with other stuff and didn't know how to do it.
I think poverty, my parents getting separated,
Yeah.
and moving from Dallas to San Antonio, we're very young.
Yeah.
Poor, and a lot of things played into it. then the people that I hanged around with, I hanged around with older guys,
Almost like you're looking for a father figure.
I was looking for a father figure. I just hanged around with older guys.
I'm gonna diagnose you that you're looking for a father figure. But there wasn't. But that's what I mean. It wasn't like you just rolled out of bed one day and said, "I'm gonna sniff spray." It was like you were dealing with a lot of things inside, and it manifested itself in the drug addiction.
I started sniffing spray about 9 years old.
Yeah,
and the ones that taught me how to sniff spray were teenagers.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah.
They're the ones that, come on, sniff spray, smoke some weed, do this,
But that's what I mean. But you didn't have like for us, it wasn't like growing up we were sheltered where we weren't tempted by drugs and stuff. It came by, but we had a father figure who comes in and says, yeah, you don't need to do that to be cool, or you don't need to do that because of this. And it doesn't mean we didn't have our own issues or we went through stuff, but that's where you kind of see, okay, growing up in a Christian home, some of that stuff, yeah, you're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to do it. But you just kind of have this, you're dealing with some of the internal factors I had inside of mine may not have been the same you had, because you were dealing with a situation there where I couldn't say, oh, I'm going to go, my internal factors that display themselves external I cannot go and blame it on an absentee parent because they were both there.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, were dealing with absentee parents or parent and a situation and things like that. I didn't have that. So now what manifests inside of me are it doesn't mean that I didn't have my own internal flesh that I did deal with. But that's what I mean. That's a lot of times what we're having to.
So let me ask a question then. So those internal things that you had to, that you started doing a spray or whatever, but so was it anybody in your family prior to you doing any kind of like drugs or anything like that?
Oh, well, my cousins and all that, and then my dad, the way he was, he was a drunk and smoked weed and all that.
Okay, so in saying that, like, if you look at it in the sense, like, maybe that could have been a generational curse that you broke with your kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I'll try to explain that when I went to Cleveland. This is so funny. I try to explain that to my kids. I said, hey, look, I said, the example that I gave y'all was I was not, y'all generation of kids, y'all messed up. And I said, that's on us. That's on our generation. We didn't do a good job of raising y'all or showing y'all the right things to do. So I'm saying, but I'm going to give you the responsibility now to break, break the curse, man. Like, you know what? If you want to be doing whatever don't do it in front of your kids, man. Do it. Because my mother, my mother and my grandmother, they were all being there partying together, bro. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of them together. That's what I saw. You know what I mean? So that's why I try to tell my kids, hey, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
My aunt had she turned 90 on October the 2nd. And they had her party Friday, And then my side, one of my aunts, she comes to me and told me, I told my kids, you're going to the rowdy side of the family, because they hardly come around, and that's, my whole family, they drink, they do whatever, they dance and all that. And my aunt is 90 years old, okay? And she wanted to dance. You got to walk her, And she was doing the twist. The walker with her 2 sons and daughters, And I was looking at that. I said, wow, look at that. Because my aunt, she's always drank, smoked, all her life in that area, And, and I see those things and, and it reminded me, when I used to hang around with them, with my family and all that, I think too, it has to do a lot with the environment that you grew up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The neighborhoods I grew up, we were poor, blah, 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 whatever, Well, everybody around that neighborhood either were going to play or do sniffy spray, And plus, at that age, you think you're cool, doing that. It's like Justin Bieber and that other, what's the other one that you said?
Did he?
No, the other kid, no, he's not a kid no more.
Usher?
Usher, that got finally molested by, what's his name? But those kids were probably infatuated with Diddy.
Well, they were part of the fame, but it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't give them the right what he did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they wanted to. They were like their heroes. Like oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was more. It was easier to get access.
With him.
Exactly. It was easier to get access because they were
like Justin Bieber. I don't think he was. I think he was like middle class.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, I guess in Canada or something.
All that. But he got infatuated with these guys that look like thugs and
I don't
and all that.
Well, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. At the time, you're probably not thinking that's gonna happen. It's the same way. Right. You're not. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of the thing with generational curses. So like when it was brought up about the topic, and I've thought about it for a long time. Even just like the whole topic of it. Because I started dissecting it a little bit more. And we ran a blog party called Breaking the Curse. And I still believe it was a good theme. And I think the way you described it is a lot better. Because to me, when you look at generational curses, the only generational curse I believe that's passed down is sin.
Yeah,
and I believe that from Adam and Eve, right? But that was conquered at the cross. If you read in Galatians, it says, he died a death that was meant for someone on a curse by dying on the tree, and that broke that curse. And I think that is the only thing that we pass on down to each other from a spiritual standpoint is that. I think what you can also constitute somewhat as a generational curse, but I don't think it's just passed down, is as you said, is you're demonstrating habits that others are seeing. So even in good households, you can demonstrate good and bad habits.
Yeah.
Right? It might not be drugs, but if you speak down to your wife and you're not honoring your wife,
correct,
and your kids pick that up, you pass down that habit.
Correct.
Same way with a wife, if you don't submit to your husband as it submits, and again, read the whole scriptures. I'm not trying to get patriarchy here. Just read the scriptures on. That's a debate for another day on that stuff.
Right.
But what I'm saying there is, if you do that, and you create a relationship of animosity between the two, and on the outside no one sees the difference, but your kids do.
Yeah.
Guess what? You taught them that. You may say, "Well, I didn't teach them drugs. I didn't teach them pornography. I didn't teach them all this." No, but you taught them this piece.
So it could be anything: entitlement, anger issues, selfishness.
Yeah,
it could be anything.
And those are like the habits and things inside of us. And you can say it's generational, and you can cut that off, like you said. I don't think it's a curse because, I mean, I guess yes and no. But what I'm more trying to get to is there's a point where there's personal accountability. Like there's a point where I can say, I learned all these bad habits or bad influences from my parents, my neighborhood and stuff. But there's a point where a personal choice has to come in and say, I'm choosing to live that way, or I'm choosing not to live that way.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like now that I'm older and my friends that I've seen them throughout the years since I've been a Christian and all that, and when we talked, it's been a while I haven't talked to one of my friends, but before we would talk and finding out that their sons were in the same gangs, they were in prison at the same time, using the same drugs and all that, and there I do believe that when God changed me, that curse was broken, because if not, you guys would have probably followed my footsteps. And I do believe, because I used to tell them in prison, look, nobody forced us to do what we did. We love to blame everything. Like I will blame the neighborhood, I will blame the poor, whatever, to my parents and all that. But like I would tell them, but in my neighborhood where I grew up, there were kids that grew up with me, boys and girls that became men and women, that they were willing to say no.
Yeah.
No to drugs, no to this, no to the gang, and they were students in, school and did good, and, they did something with their life. So, and that's when I would tell them, that's what a real man and a real woman is.
But I think, but I think that's that. But that's what I mean. I mean, I think yes, you broke a curse, and I'm not saying that, but that's where the balance is. Like,
the curse of sin,
the curse of sin, and then kind of that piece. But at the same part, there's a certain point where, because let's say that even if you did that and around 18 or 19, I said, man, I choose not to follow that.
Right, exactly.
Right? And I ended up in prison. That still had nothing to do with that. That wasn't an influence I was given. It was a decision I made. And so there's a balance on it. I think I agree. But
like I would always tell families in the church, don't take it for granted because your children comes, they've been in the nursery and they've been through the children's church and the teenagers, that they're safe because you're safe. If they don't give their life to Christ, I'm
gonna,
they're not,
I'm going to make a statement here, and it may be controversial, and it's up for debate. This is just my thoughts. So I'm thinking through this right now. I think a lot of times in church, my opinion, the reason you see a second generation fall off and a third generation, there's multiple reasons. There's not one pin factor, but I think one factor is sometimes the parents who are first generational saved, they're dealing so much with the external that they're not dealing with the internal.
Right.
And the church and everyone else will see the external. The kids see the internal because they see it there at the household. And so what ends up happening is they're dealing with and that's why it's important. It's like, we'll put them in Christian school. You can't listen to that music. You can't watch this stuff. You can't do all this stuff. I'm glad I didn't grow up in that kind of house. Like, I'll be honest, we didn't grow up in that kind of household. Like, and you guys can judge my dad and my mom later on in the comment section, but we were watching rated R movies with them. It wasn't like they covered our eyes on certain pieces, but it wasn't like, oh my God, we're only gonna watch G-rated movies because we're saved and we're this and that. But what I did see in the internal was, I saw two people who sometimes got into arguments, but I also saw two people who were praying, who were dealing with tough stuff, and I saw the internal part of it. Right. And as you grow up and you get older, you're like, oh, they were dealing with their internal struggles. They were dealing, and it makes it easier when you grow up in the church. When you grow up in the church, and I look at it, and there was a part of me at a time where I'm like, well, I shouldn't have any of these internal struggles. I grew up in the church. All of that should have been gone. But no. But
that's how it works.
You can feel that way sometimes. And then you come to the understanding, wait a second, they were dealing with it. I got to deal with mine. Mine aren't the same as theirs. I got to deal with mine. And it's okay that I'm having to deal with mine. It's not like I have to leave the church because I'm having to deal with mine.
Especially if you don't give your life to Christ, the flesh is going to control sin. That's why when I ran the children's church for a while, I used to get a kick with the kids because kids are innocent. And we used to pick up petitions, right? Yeah. And kids could say, can you pray for my dad? Because my dad smokes and drinks, and he was a leader of the church. Or can we pray for my mom and dad because they were innocent. They weren't
right. They just trying to be like, hey, right, exactly.
But once the parents got here, they would walk out together inside like a happy Christian family.
And then go home.
But that's true. That's why I always say nobody knows what's happening behind closed doors. That's why sometimes when something happens in a neighborhood or things like that, we all freak out.
You don't know,
To me,
with Puff Daddy and all this, and like the other one, what's his name?
What?
That one, that other
Epstein?
No, the other black guy that got two with all those teenagers and all that.
R. Kelly.
Oh yeah, R. Kelly. Oh yeah, wow. I forgot all about him.
Nobody knows until it starts coming out. Yeah. What's going on and all that.
Well, it's like even like the whole Aaron Hernandez thing right now. Like when you see they have a new show on there, on Hulu, and I was watching it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Like the whole thing now is leading to his issues of not being able to deal with homosexuality. Yeah. Now, it's true or not, I don't know, but that's one of the things that they're kind of trying to tie it into. I think the thing with here, in my opinion, the big generational curse you could break is allowing Christ in your heart and allowing him to deal with the internal. Like truly, like not just saying the repentance prayer, but allowing God to do the internal with you and being open that God's doing the internal. Like that like the scripture you quoted, which, from Paul, like that's Paul talking about struggling with his flesh. Yeah. Not Paul talking about the external, just
that's
struggling
Paul
with
being
his
transparent.
flesh.
I mean,
right.
Paul admitted it, but throughout the Bible, you see where men struggle with the flesh. Like I was teaching Wednesday with Abraham and Isaac. Abraham struggled with the flesh when there was a famine when he first left.
Yeah.
Great famine, they say. And they were going, I think, to Egypt.
Yeah.
And before he went, he told Sarah, wait a minute, you're very beautiful. And when the men are going to see you, they're going to, desire you, want you. Mm-hmm. And if they know I'm your husband, they're going to want to kill me.
Yeah.
So tell me that, tell me
your sister
that you're my sister.
Yeah.
And then, when the king found out whatever, he rebuked Abraham.
Yeah.
Because, they feared God.
Of course.
They feared God even if they didn't know God.
Mm-hmm. But I think to your point, that's kind of the internal struggle.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, Isaac goes through the same thing. His son, through the great famine and all that.
But that's what's interesting. Like to your example, you have Abraham internal struggle of dealing with a beautiful wife and his surroundings. And the external thing that came out of it was he had to lie to Pharaoh.
Right.
And cause Sarah to lie as well.
Right.
Like you see the kind of things that, and I think the thing with Paul, like if you look at Paul and some of his writings when he's talking about, there's a lot of things struggling with the flesh, and people always go to, I think even when we talk about Paul and lust and stuff, but Paul, if you read Paul, his strong thing was, but as a Pharisee, he says it several times, as a Pharisee, if you put me up against the law, I was perfect. Yeah. So I earned God's love.
Yeah. Right.
And then what he later on says is, but I have to count it all as a loss to actually understand God's love. Yeah, right. Like I have to count that as a loss. Yeah. And that's his internal struggle because he wants to fall back and say, Lord, I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. I'm a good person. And then he has to fall back to this. So I think that's one of the things I would say is like, you got to deal with the internal. That's the spiritual battle, the internal and the external.
Yeah, because, once, look, God changed me almost 30-something years ago, okay? He took away drugs and all that.
Yeah.
But then I had to start dealing with things that I had in me that I didn't know, like pride, anger, self-esteem, things, that it wasn't drugs. It was things that I had in me.
That's what I
had to
anger. That's what I'm telling you. That the internal.
I can't see that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's in there. It's in there.
Oh wait, bro.
It's in there.
I can't see that.
I gotta laugh.
I can't see that, bro.
Oh, it's in there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all, but I've never seen that.
I mean,
I can't see that in him. Anger.
He's never been,
saw it.
Let me be clear. He's never been abusive to us, so I never saw the anger in that standpoint. But you could see.
What?
No, you could see the beast come out every once in a while. Like you could see it come out every once in a while because it's his flesh, it's his human flesh. So you could see it come out. There's times like and most people
get after people before.
No, that's one thing. But I'm talking about like, there's a difference.
Like no, I've never seen him
growing up. You could see salvation will be put to the side if he thought something was harming one of us, his kids. Like salvation got put to the side, and you could see.
Yeah, okay.
No, but
it shouldn't be different. But I get it.
But that's what I mean. Like, and you could see some of that. Like, and
but the reason
you
don't. A lot of people don't see it now is because God has helped me deal with it. Throughout the years. But at the very beginning, I didn't know how to deal with it because I was all character. Because that's why my dad was always giving me discipline. Because I would lash out.
That's what
I've always been a firecracker. I explode. That's the way I used to be. And once I explode, I did the damage and all that. Afterwards, I was calm like anything, but, because
looking at the carnage, huh?
Because my anger, And God had to deal with that. The first time he dealt with it when I was in the home with this Puerto Rican, that was a counselor there. And this, you think Don was bad? No, this Puerto Rican was about 5 times Don, And they had me on discipline washing dishes, and he would get right here on my face, talking trash and telling me, you're no good, you're this, and blah, blah, blah. In Puerto Rican, you can't understand them when they're speaking fast.
Yeah.
And then he would I would wash all the dishes. Then he said, no, wash them again. They're all dirty. So one night, I was about to stop him with a fork, But thank God that another counselor came at that moment, and he saw my hand. I was going already, and he said, "No, what's wrong with you?" And that Puerto Rican man, he turned white because he knew I was gonna,
Yeah.
And right then and then, when I told my dad, "No, I'm leaving this place, this and that," no, Joe, God is dealing with you.
Yeah.
God is dealing with you. He's showing you where you need to work in your life.
Yeah.
Even at the home, I had an enemy sleeping in the top bunk when I got there. I thought that was a blessing of God. I was gonna stab him right through the mattress, But that's where God, that's where God was started dealing with the other things,
The eternal.
not drugs, the other things that were in me.
And I think that's. I think that's where I would leave with this phrase of God therapy.
But
we all need.
Yeah.
Because not everything, yes, we battle the devil. Yes, spiritual warfare, but sometimes it's just the flesh that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
That God has to come and show us. And a lot of people do not allow God, to deal with them in those areas. They want to blame the devil all the time.
Well, I think that's part of where like you'll see people will do therapy for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I believe in therapy. I don't knock it at all. But I think there's a spiritual therapy that can only be done with God. And that's when you're in a relationship with him, you go what I call God therapy. It's this his way of, he wants to be in a relationship with you, and he's in that relationship with you, but he also understands you're dealing with stuff that like God is complete. We're not.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with stuff in us to help us be complete so that we can have that relationship. Because as most people know, in the earthly standpoint, if you have two incomplete people trying to be in a relationship, there's going to be a lot of battles because there's a lot of things that come up and things are going to be triggered. So again, recommend you guys deal with that. With that, hit the like and subscribe button, and add some more comments of other topics you want us to talk about. Because we'll keep touching on it.
What happened?
Yeah, and let's just pray for the Moreno's family. They lost a family member, Jimmy and his wife and his daughter.
Oh, okay.
They're having a hard time.
Oh, okay.
With it, they're hurting. Let's pray for for them for comfort and strength. The funeral's gonna be in about a week.
Okay, so, whether you know them or not, we should always be praying for each other. You don't need to know all the details. Just keep each other in prayer, and then again, hit that like and subscribe button. Keep passing it on.